Have you ever really stopped to think about what your family's story is all about? I mean, beyond just the family tree and the photo albums, what's the real message that's been passed down generation after generation? Today, we're going to dive into this exact idea, looking at a really powerful memoir where one woman, right in the middle of a personal crisis, discovers this hidden meaning in her family's legacy. So for the author, Jane Starling, years and years of grief that she'd pushed down, from losing her parents, her siblings, it all came roaring back during menopause. And this wasn't some slow leak. As she puts it, it was like a dam finally, completely bursting. You can just imagine that feeling, right? This sudden flood of emotion left her feeling totally submerged. She actually describes it as drowning, like every single day was a fight just to keep her head above water. And the way she talks about this time is just so raw. It wasn't just sadness. She felt like she was literally dissolving from the inside out. She'd be crying in our car, telling her husband it took every last bit of energy just to make it through the day. At one point, she broke down while baking her daughter a birthday cake, whispering, "I feel like I'm dying." So, that brings us to our first section, a dam finally bursting. Because this crisis, you see, it wasn't about one thing that just happened. It was about her finally having to face a whole lifetime of grief and pain that she'd been carrying around for decades. She says this grief felt like a real physical weight, like lugging a 20-pound bag of potatoes with her everywhere. And that heavy feeling led to some huge questions. What is the point of all this? Why are we working so hard if, in the end, we all just die? The very reason for her existence felt like it was starting to crumble. But then, just when things felt their darkest, she had a breakthrough. And it didn't happen in a therapist's office or by reading a book. No, it came from somewhere totally unexpected, her garden. This was the start of a huge revelation. So picture this. It's a crisp autumn day. She's on her hands and knees in her garden, her hands are covered in dirt, and she's pulling up all the dead flowers from the summer. And in that simple, earthy moment, an idea hit her, as she says, like a bolt of lightning. And that's when it all clicked. She saw this incredible parallel. In a garden, the old flowers have to die and go back to the soil so there's space for new life to grow in the spring. And our lives, they're just like that. Each generation gets its season to bloom, to really shine. And then we lovingly step aside to make room for the next one. It wasn't sad, it was natural, and it all of a sudden made perfect sense. This huge realization she had in the garden, well, that became the key that unlocked a much, much deeper truth about her entire family story. And that brings us to the core idea of this whole explainer. We are the message. As she was writing down her family's history, she kept wrestling with this question. Was she just doing this for herself? Was it just a way to deal with her own pain? Or was there something bigger in their story, something that everyone could learn from? And then the answer hit her. It wasn't about finding one single moral to the story. Their lives themselves were the message. She realized, I am the message. Her mom, her dad, her siblings, their entire collective experience, all their struggles and survival, that was the legacy. So what exactly is the message? Well, it's everything. It's the whole package. It's all the lessons, the strengths they give you, the warnings hidden in their mistakes, and most importantly, the stories of how they just managed to keep going. It's the data left behind for the next generation. Okay, so once she had this amazing new way of looking at things, she could finally start to unpack the lessons hidden in her family's lives. She began to see each person not just as someone she missed, but as a carrier of these very specific lessons, both the good stuff and the cautionary tales. Take her dad, for instance. He passed down this incredible entrepreneurial spirit and a deep faith. But his life was also a warning about what happens when you work yourself to the bone. Or her mom, who was a masterclass in strength and resourcefulness, but also modeled this idea that you should hide your true feelings to protect everyone else. See? Each life was this dual legacy, a gift and a warning. And when she zoomed out and looked at the whole family, she saw these bigger themes that were like the glue holding them all together. Yeah, they went through some incredibly tough times, but what really defined them was a fierce love for each other, an ability to laugh, an unbelievable will to survive, and a faith that just kept them getting back up no matter how many times they got knocked down. So, what do you do with all this? Once you've figured out the message from your past, what's next? Well, you carry it forward. This final part is all about turning that understanding into a living legacy for the future. For the author, this whole message thing isn't just some abstract idea. It's real. It's alive and breathing in her 4 daughters and her 10 grandchildren. She sees the proof of her family's story in them, and she notes that each new generation is doing better, and not just with money, but emotionally, as people, as parents. So when you boil it all down, after all the pain and the grief and the struggle, the one word that sums up her family's entire message is hope. It's the kind of hope that's earned through survival, through progress, and through the incredible power of love and laughter to get you through just about anything. And that brings us to the end, but really, it's more of a beginning, because it leaves all of us with a really important question. If you were to look at your own family's history, the good, the bad, the strengths, the warnings, what message is your family's story trying to tell you?